Namaste and welcome. Thank you all for joining us this evening for our year-end webinar, The State of Hindus in America. I am Sheetal Shah, the CFO and Managing Director at the Hindu American Foundation. I'll be your host this evening, and I'll also be the moderator for today's conversation. But first, just a friendly reminder that today's presentation cannot be recorded, shared, or otherwise disseminated in whole or in part without the expressed written consent from HAF. So tonight, I am joined by three of my esteemed HAF colleagues, HAF's Executive Director, Suhag Shukla, our Managing Director, Samir Kalra, and our Senior Director of Communications, Matt McDermott. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hello, namaste.
All right, so we're here to chat about the state of Hindus in America. We've had quite a year, a lot of highs, quite a few lows, especially the latter part of this year. But let's start chronologically. So let's start with something amazing that happened at the beginning of 2025, Kumbha Mela. This was the largest gathering in history, with somewhere between 400 to 600 million people in attendance. And Matt and Suhag, you were two of those millions of people in attendance. Want to share what the experience was like?
It's kind of hard to believe that it even happened this year. It was an incredible, absolutely incredible experience. I mean, just the number of people. I mean, there was no personal space, whether you're walking, whether you're sitting, it was just teeming with people and people and people. But just everyone was there smiling, friendly, offering food to one another. It was absolutely incredible. Plus, I got to travel with Mihir and Vijay and Rajiv Singh, one of our board members, so and Tanvi, Mihir's wife. So that always has its adventures that come along with it. I think just to get to the Kumbh Mela, we went by airplane, taxi, some kind of boat, walking, and mopeds. So just getting there was an adventure.
Yeah, it was. I hitched a ride on the back of a motorcycle from the airport because there were no taxis, and somebody's just like, let's hop on, and balancing luggage. It was fun. It was good. But yeah, I second the thing about it being very crowded but it being very peaceful. I described it as like a really crowded music festival, but it goes on for 10 miles in every direction, it feels like. But everyone's having a great time, and there was no jostling, even when it was really crowded at like main bathing areas. People were being very respectful, and it was very well run, I have to say, especially for managing such a large crowd.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you guys are having a good time. It was like a Hindu nationalist party, right? I mean, it was all
Absolutely.
supremacist welcome, of course.
No, I mean,
Yes.
just to say that I felt like half of HAF was there at one point. It all happened to like
Half of you
I
were there.
I
None of
know
us, nobody was
to
in the
pull
office.
to pull the curtain back. I announced I'm going, then all of a sudden everyone's like, "Let's go!" And
Yes, that's
but we
true.
weren't there at the same time. I was there, I think, the week before everyone else, and I was feeding everyone intel on the ground of what you have to do and the fact what pontoon bridges were open because they would randomly close and all sorts of stuff.
But to Samir's point, upon landing, we were given our map. It was a pyramid, telling us who would be on top, who was in the middle, who was on the bottom, who could touch who. Because according to the California Civil Rights Department, we are mandated to discriminate against one another. So it was really helpful. I'm glad that they had that right upon landing. So,
Well, I mean, my wife and daughters discriminate against me. I think we should be talking about the state of Hindus in my house. Okay, personally. Forget about in America, in my house.
I know an organization that can help you, Samir.
Okay.
Well, so speaking of Hindu nationalists, you can see on the screen here we have some samples of some of the media coverage, particularly from Western media on the Kumbh Mela. Both of these happen to come from the New York Times. A lot of what Matt and Suhag that you guys described wasn't necessarily the coverage that was being portrayed. Rather, as you can see, it was portrayed as a big PR stunt for Modi and his Hindu nationalist party. Or, that the unfortunate stampede that did occur was given quite a bit of prominence over the fact that the rest of, the 600 million people who were in attendance, that was a peaceful, beautiful, well-organized event. That sort of stuff was sort of just downplayed.
It downplayed or not even reported on, right? Like CNN, I think the last story that they had on the Kumbha Mela was from 2013, not 2025. So if it made it on the radar, it was usually something negative. They ignored all the infrastructure. I mean, Harvard at least thinks that this is worth studying because they're essentially creating a mini city. I lost track, but there were literally stainless steel plates that created roads that we walked on. And if we didn't have those roads, I believe from what I was told, that part of the river is actually the riverbank and it would have been underwater. So we're talking about hundreds of miles of road that were laid down, biodegradable toilets, hospitals, cameras everywhere. I mean, there was not a moment that you would feel unsafe. There were people who were helping each other and everything, but none of that made the mainstream coverage, as we can see by how the event was described. I will say though that Indian media on many fronts also didn't get it right. So I tweeted a photo that I was taking my dad because it was his. He said, if this is the last thing I do, this is what I want to do. And so that's kind of what prompted me to join the bandwagon that Matt started. And so I tweeted a photo of us at the airport saying that I'm taking my 85-year-old father to Kumbh Mela. And somehow the regional media in Prayagraj described me as the president of HAF who lives in Prayagraj, who flew to California to pick up my dad and bring him for a dip, and then I was going to drop him back off. So fact checking wasn't necessarily a strong suit for Indian media either on this one.
Got that
Well, I
wrong.
mean, I think what President Suhag points out is, I
Yes.
think, an important thing. So if you just kind of just take these two clips that we have on the screen right now, and you contrast that to any large gathering, religious gathering that takes place around the world, whether it's Hajj in Mecca or whether it's, going to see the Pope in the
Mhm.
Vatican, you always see beautiful stories described about how it's a spiritual and religious event, and you hear all these like personal stories about people traveling from near and far to experience it, once in their life if they're lucky. And yet, this is the garbage that we have to deal with, and it's not isolated, right? This is not the only type of public expression of Hinduism or Hindu spirituality that always gets conflated with some political event that is somehow helping Mr. Modi, right? None of the stories about people coming from America or other parts of the world to experience this, like your own story, President Shukla,
Yes.
about taking your dad, right? I mean, that's a great story, right? But no, forget about that, right? Let's talk about this being some right, helping the right wing base of Narendra Modi and it being a political party, I mean, it being like a huge party for Hindu nationalists to get together, a political event, right?
600 million, right? 600 million nationals. The other thing is that it really it it's like many other things where if it doesn't fit the stereotypes that they want to perpetuate, that the editors are looking for, they're not going to cover it. There were so many female gurus or swaminis that were heading entire akhadas or leading figures throughout the Kumbh Mela. Of course, millions and millions of people transcending every difference possible, economic, social, communal, ancestral, working side by side, worshiping side by side. That also breaks the stereotype. And there was a Sikh Hakata, there were Buddhist people there, Buddhist leaders, kings, dignitaries from all around the world. It just broke every stereotype. And similar to kind of the Pew Forum, if you remember that survey, it broke a lot of stereotypes. But when you look at the media coverage, it was absolute crickets.
Yeah. And you mentioned something, just I think you said the number was like 600 million. I mean, if you just, right, was that the number you
I think that's what it was. Sheetal, is that what you just
So,
said?
you know what? When I looked it up, the number varies from 400 to 600 million. They said some people, some of the numbers that are quoting 666 million were the number of dips that were
Yeah,
taken, not necessarily unique individuals. So
yeah.
that's why I went with 400 to 600.
Okay.
Still, it's a big ass
Yeah.
number.
So, I mean, even
Yeah.
if we like give or take 300 million, right? I mean,
Exactly.
that's still
Yeah,
like an
give or
immense
take
amount
300
of
Yeah,
million.
people.
there were
I mean,
some days.
the
Yeah.
logistical undertaking, like if you just think about that, that's amazing. I mean, we can't even manage Black Friday sales at Target here in America, and we're talking about like hundreds of millions of people, going and kind of all converging for this, amazing event. So
Yeah.
again, like I think it's unprecedented, right? But none of that nobody would know about that, right? All you hear
Mm-mm.
about is stampedes or Hindu nationalism.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think, just diverging a little bit from where we were going, I think that's just a general problem with media coverage around Hindus and Hindu Dharma in general, right? I mean, whether you're covering the Kumbh Mela, whether you're talking about, the monkey god or the elephant god, or anything else that makes us seem exotic or weird or strange, that's generally how the media tends to portray us. It's been an ongoing issue for years.
Well,
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm personally a little strange, but that's neither here nor there. So,
Fair enough. Um, let's move on to something else that was positive. Um, let's talk about Diwali. Samir, Diwali is officially a state holiday in California. You guys did it. Woohoo!
We also
yeah.
did it in Connecticut.
Yes,
Yes,
you
Yes.
did.
that is
We have
correct.
it in New York City too.
Yeah, yeah.
It's
Yeah, I mean, it was a
spreading.
accomplishment, right? I mean, I think, the state holidays, official state holidays gives you the kind of the sanction of government. So it's a huge kind of nod to the presence of the Hindu American community and broader Indian American and South Asian community. But I think if you look more generally, it symbolizes what I would say is the arrival in the mainstream of Diwali, right? And Hindu Americans. And I think any time that happens, unfortunately, it is going to be met with a lot of hatred, right? And so that always happens. But I think what we focus on at HAF is, you know, focusing on the positive, focusing on producing these types of initiatives or creating these types of initiatives where we are actually helping people on the ground, right? Now, there's a number of people in California that have been reaching out about, hey, now how do I get this in my district, right? Because now you have it as a state holiday, you still have to go to your school district, but at least you have that officially recognized at the state level. And now it's easier to go to your school district. So that's what we're focused on. Unfortunately, not everyone is focused on that. A lot of people are focused on the public expression of Diwali, that it's too mainstream, right? So you can only be so Hindu and not more, right? So there's like this weird thing that's been going on in the last several months. Particularly, you see it on social media, and and these things that anytime there's a public celebration like Diwali, it always brings up some hateful reference to Indians and H-1B visas need to go back home, or our demon gods and celebrating our demon gods here. I mean, do these people even know what the difference between any Indian, whether they're an H-1B or not, or Hindu, whether they're an H-1B or not? Obviously not, right? They don't know that. They don't know that my children, Swag's children, are all third generation Hindu Americans, right? So it's on the one hand, it's frustrating because you do something positive and then you celebrate that positivity, and we're not doing it, that in a way that's violating anyone else's rights, that's tearing anyone else down. All we're doing is trying to protect the rights and ability of our own community to celebrate and take time off if they want to for Diwali. But that's always met with hate and opposition. And hey, don't be too public about your faith. Don't be too public about your identity. And let's be clear, this type of hatred that we're receiving, even around Diwali and specifically, it's not limited to the far right, the MAGA right? I mean, we see it all the time coming from the far left as well. I mean, they're the ones that created the playbook, right? Now MAGA is just kind of, copy paste and using the same terminology, using the same way that they describe Hindus and Hinduism, etc. So, I think it slightly dampens the mood when we have these positive accomplishments, but nonetheless, I think at the end of the day, it's on the ground we're having that impact, and that's the important thing that we all have to remember.
Yeah, I prefer referring to all the haters as party poopers because that's what they are. And as Samir alluded to, they come from both the left and right. I think there was, I don't know who makes me angrier, but there was an infuriating article by someone who's of Indian origin saying, well, now that you're getting hate from the right, you really Hindus should introspect that you've been celebrating Diwali too much. So that to me, by definition, is a party pooper. But I say that as a community, our reaction should be celebrate more, invite more people. I think what we see on social media can be, of course, alarming, but we need to keep in mind that it's not a reflection of the many Americans who are pluralistic, who accept differences, and who are part of your companies, your schools, your neighborhoods. And so Diwali still remains a very good tool to educate people in a way that's inclusive, that allows them to experience the beauty of our tradition.
Yeah. I mean, it also creates a lot of confusion when I see all this rhetoric about go back to your country or go back to, where you belong. I'm like, does that mean I should go back to Santa Clara where I was born or go back to Fremont where I grew up? So, for me, it's a little cognitive dissonance there, and I'm not
We
sure
can
what the right.
carpool, Samir, because I was born in San Jose,
Yeah,
so right
not
there
too far
neighboring
away.
you,
Yeah,
so we
yeah,
could
yeah,
carpool.
And I mean, where is Matt supposed to go?
yeah.
I I
Ireland,
don't know.
Back to
Scotland,
Ireland, Matt. Get out of here.
get out of
Well,
here.
no, I mean, my earliest relatives in North America arrived in 1639. So I challenge any heritage, quote unquote, heritage American. I can out heritage you. And they came from England, despite the last.
We also have someone on staff who is a descendant of someone from the Mayflower. So tell him to go back.
It's not, it's a hint. It's not me, by the way.
Not to be confused with Samir Kalra, who did not arrive on the Mayflower, nor did his ancestors.
I
Who
don't
is
think anyone was confused about that.
Just in case. Just in case.
But I mean, I think both of you make really good points. For those people who perhaps are not necessarily addicted to X like Asim is, your husband, Suhag.
Yes.
Maybe we could switch to the next slide just to share with folks. Unfortunately, some of the increasing anti-Hindu sentiment that we have been seeing in places like Twitter, and across social media, this has particularly been on the rise, I would say, in the latter part of the year or so. I mean, some of the Diwali celebrations have definitely fueled it. But I think that we've seen the Murthy, the Hanuman Murthy that went up in Texas. That was another catalyst for quite a bit of anti-Hindu hate on social media. And of course, I think Vivek Ramaswamy was targeted quite a bit. I think one was just like that cute picture that he posted of his kids
Oh,
over
it's awful.
Halloween. And I mean, just, the backlash was ridiculous. Like what's going on, guys?
I think what we're seeing, I mean, to Samir's point, in the past, we've seen a lot of anti-Hindu sentiment come from the left, but as you see on the screen, I think, Sheetal, you're right. It's probably been about the last 6 months. It's coming from a lot of, I would say, Christian nationalists, anti-immigrant generally, anti-Indian, anti-Hindu. And I've said this before on a number of interviews. It is worse than I've ever seen it. It's a cesspool if you hang out on X, the type of stuff that we're seeing every day. You have to laugh because it's so absurd and demoralizing sometimes. If you don't laugh, you're going to start crying, frankly.
Well, I think one of the things, like just looking at least two of these examples, legal immigration is far worse than illegal immigration. At least the Hispanics worship Christ. Meanwhile, the H-1Bs are putting up statues of their demon monkey gods in our land. Now, this is clearly coming from a white nationalist. But then you have the Civil Rights Department of California, a so-called progressive state, that talks about how Indians are importing their ugly discriminatory caste system. Like it's the same playbook. It's the same trope of painting Hindus in a particular way, in a very negative way. Look at the loads of crash ready to be submerged in the Edison. These Indians are destroying our air, water, and land habitats in no time. So this is coming again from a Christian nationalist or a white nationalist. And meanwhile, you have South Asian leftists complaining about firecrackers and fireworks and how Indians are polluting the environment and how it's cruel to animals. But then, of course, no admonition or critique of like animal sacrifices or anything like that that happen with other festivals. So you can kind of see this pattern emerging where now, I think today I just got a, newsletter from one of our favorite organizations talking about how they're the only ones who are standing up against hate,
I
but
saw that.
completely ignoring the fact that these tropes, these formulas, they just cut and pasted, they just changed a few words around, but they are responsible for having fomented this sort of negative, hateful rhetoric towards Hindus, and now they want to pretend they want to be the heroes. Please. They're not for any kind of rights. Not human rights, not Hindu rights.
So I guess my question to you guys is, where does this leave us, right? I mean, we're getting it from both sides, and we're stuck in the middle. What are Hindu Americans supposed to do? What do we, what's the answer?
Well, I think one thing is people should be the little bit of hope in it, if there is one, is that I think that what you're seeing online is something that I don't know how to say it. I don't think there's a lot below the iceberg. Like the tip, it's very loud, it's very hateful, but I'm not sure what I don't think there's a great depth underneath there. I think Suhag, you said it before. It's like there are plenty of people that want nothing to do with this, but for some reason, in the past 6 months, it has come out of the woodwork, and it's been difficult to see. That's all I can say.
I'd say get involved. Get involved in any way that you can. Local food banks, some sort of save the library or whatever local causes that bring different types of people together. If reading is important to you, get involved with any library volunteering programs. If cleanups are important to you, sure, you can clean up the streets or adopt a street with your temple, but also adopt it with the local, Toastmasters or whatever. I think the more we increase our visibility in these local causes to show that we are very much a part of our American communities, the more that those pose opportunities for us to educate our neighbors, educate our community members. One of the things that really gives me hope is a few months ago, I think it was in Palm Bay City in Florida, where a city council member said that all H-1Bs should be deported. Maybe he said all Indians should be deported, and he just started doubling down. And the community down there, mostly motel and hotel owners and small business owners, came out in full force to testify. And so I was watching the testimony online, and I had like a little bit of a tally going on in terms of, oh, this person is supporting the council member, this person is criticizing the council member. And basically the action item was for the city council to vote on sending a letter to the governor to dismiss this council member. And so this woman comes up and she says, she was white, and she says, I firmly believe in the Second Amendment. I own a gun. I'm a Christian, and I voted for President Trump. And so I was about to mark for the council member. And then she said, Dr. Patel is one of the kindest people I know, and she's a reflection of this community. And went on to share a story about how when she was in a really dire straight type situation, in an abusive relationship, she was scared to leave, but it was Dr. Patel who supported her, encouraged her to keep herself and her family safe, even paid for an Airbnb for a couple of months until she could get back on her feet. So those types of stories are the story of America. It's the story of our community and how we give back. So the only way that people are going to know about us is if they see us. So I say just get active.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say also from an organizational perspective, right? From what HAF does and the value that we bring is number one is building relationships, right? Building relationships with our local elected officials, like, that you gave that example, Sohag, of that one city in Florida, building relationships with policymakers, building relationships with other organizations, civil rights organizations, interfaith groups, etc., and share the issues that we're facing, right? And we get their support on those issues. The other thing is that we, as an organization, and we do this in many different areas, but especially when dealing with this type of hateful rhetoric, is creating the resources that help the community being able to stand up to that, whether it's in a school setting, whether it's in the workplace, whether it's in the broader community, or whether it's having your rights restricted by some level of government. So we create the resources, we have the training programs, and we empower people to be able to address it themselves, because ultimately we all have to be our own best advocates. But how do we create the templates or the information and the resources to be able to do that effectively? And that's where HAF comes in, and that's what a lot of our work focuses on.
Right. And in terms of templates and such, particularly since we were talking about the media earlier and kind of some of the not so great coverage that we've been subjected to, what do you recommend for people in terms of writing into the media or engaging the media? What's a good way of doing that? Because if the community doesn't respond or doesn't engage the media, well, then the current coverage is just going to continue or worsen.
I mean, letters to the editor are still effective. You have to be very concise. Um, I think that's a good avenue, but I think it's one thing that we do at HAF is go to conferences, talk to journalists, specific conferences for the media. I mean, we've sponsored events where we are there putting ourselves out to say that here's a Hindu presence, just to build those relationships. And it's just going to take time. I think it's going to frankly take a generational shift with reporters that are younger. You've got a lot of people that are uh, that it's just going to take that turnover, I think, to some degree. But as I said, letters to the editor are good. I would say don't get involved in troll battles online. It's a dead end. Leave that to people that, I don't know, leave that. I was going to say leave that to the professionals, but I don't know if there are professional trolls out there.
There are.
And there are.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Yeah, remember I have a bunch of Hindu trolls, or like a cell in my basement, so they're there.
okay. Suhag's definitely.
It's like Snow White and the Seven Trolls.
Yes.
Seven trolls. I mean, but the serious thing in that is that when you see somebody talking about your demon monkey god in our lands, don't. There's no need to go in and debate these people. That's not your audience. Suhag's example of somebody in Palm Bay, just where there's a Hindu doctor, and just being a good person and giving people a counter narrative, a counter example, I think is very useful.
Yeah,
Also
I
say
mean,
oh, you go.
okay.
Okay.
Beauty before brain, so I'll go first. Anyway. Well, I mean, I think Matt is actually downplaying a little
Did
bit
you
because
say
he's
beauty
actually.
before brain and you'll go
He did.
first?
He
Yeah, he
did.
did.
He
Did.
Okay,
did.
go ahead.
I
I'll
should have
take that
said
one.
I
I'd
should have
rather
said
be smart
beauty
than
and
pretty.
brains first, and then I would go. But flip of the tongue. Anyway, but I think Matt's actually downplaying a little bit, but he's actually created some great media guides and resources on some of these very topics that we're talking about. So we go back to kind of the first slides about Kumbha Mela and kind of how all this talk about Hindu nationalism, Hindutva, et cetera, et cetera. He created, I believe it earlier this year or last year, a
It
guide
was last year. There was an
last year.
entire guide that we put out on Hindu nationalism that addresses some of the talking points that are put out by, I think, the same organization Suhag was referring to, the four-letter organization beginning with H that isn't us. And those can be effective, but I don't want to, as effective and useful as those are, it is still going to take time
Sure.
because you put out those materials and people have what is it? It's hard to convince somebody of something when not believing it affects their paycheck. There's some statement about
Hmm.
that, and that people are invested in a story and they've made up their minds and they fit facts to fit their predetermined conclusion. So it's going to take some time when you present people with facts. And to that, you have to recognize what your audience is. Going back to the haters again online, you're not going to convince a Christian nationalist that Hinduism is anything other than heathenism and demon worship. But there's a whole middle of people who will be swayed and swayed by just those interpersonal reactions. And sometimes they're swayed by facts. But I think it's really that those person-to-person connections, which changes minds.
I was going to say, if you're going to write a letter to the editor, presume or put your game face on and presume ignorance. Do not
Yes.
presume bias. I think that the minute you accuse someone of bias, especially a journalist who takes pride in being neutral, it's a personal affront. So even though you know they're biased, even though everything is laden with activist language, just go in and plead your ignorance to their bias and give them the presumption of ignorance. And I think that
Yeah.
opens the door a little bit more in getting engagement. The minute you say you're biased, they're going to say, well, you're biased. And it turns into like a kindergarten sandbox fight. So if you want to affect change, I think there are things that we kind of have to put a game face on for.
Agree entirely.
In the interest of time, I'm going to move on to kind of the last point, which is Samir's favorite topic ever, transnational repression and Khalistanis. Uh, I'm not even going to ask. Samir, just take it away.
All right. Open mic session.
Open mic.
No, I mean, I think, we were talking about earlier where, the hate's coming from different directions. And this is another example where the hate's coming from the broader South Asian community, whatever that you want to call it. And unfortunately, you have a very, what I would call sophisticated and effective lobby, the Khalistan lobby. And I want to be very clear in distinguishing that when I talk about Khalistanis, I don't mean the ordinary Sikh population. I think Hindus and Sikhs have a long history of collaboration, intermarriage, and common values and beliefs. And this is not in any way talking about Sikhs in general. This is talking about kind of that small percentage, but very loud and influential percentage that are extremists and that are advocating for a separate state of Khalistan. Problem is, we're in America. And what they're doing here is that they are hiding behind this issue of transnational oppression. So they're promoting, on the one hand, violently, oftentimes, their idea of creating a separate state carved out of India, and basically using this bogey of transnational oppression that anyone that speaks out against them, particularly Hindus, or criticizes their movement, is automatically engaging in transnational oppression on behalf of the Indian government, is a proxy of the Indian government, et cetera, et cetera. And so, I think it would be laughable, I think, if it didn't have real consequences. And the real consequences is something that we've seen most recently in California, where they tried to pass a bill, SB 509, which would have basically, trained law enforcement to treat Hindu Americans with suspicion, and basically assume that we are, proxies of the Indian government, we are, foreign agents, and we're trying to repress, Sikh activism in America, which couldn't be further from the truth. So that's where the problem lies, right? Otherwise, we would care less, right? Because the movement is dead in India, right? Nobody wants Khalistan in India, right? And this has been
They want it in
supported.
Pakistan, though.
Yeah, I know. They want it in Yuba City. But
Yeah.
anyways, survey over survey, political elections in India have clearly shown that there's no appetite for Khalistan, and show overwhelmingly that Sikhs are proud of their Indian identity, get along well with Hindus, and don't face discrimination and any form of repression. And so this narrative is very much based in the West, and is based in the US and Canada, and the UK to a lesser extent, and Australia, but really here in Canada. And so, this issue is just, it's kind of like, it's unfortunate because it's again been clumped together with this idea of Hindu nationalism and Hindutva, that again, a public expression of, Hindu identity or speaking out on issues either A, makes you Hindu nationalist, B, makes you a proxy of the Indian government, or C, all of the above. In my case, it's all of the above, obviously, and I drive around in a black SUV and transnationally repress people. But, this is another thing that I think the problem we see now, fortunately, due to a lot of, collaboration with multiple organizations and the community, we were able to defeat bills like SB 509 in California and prevent it from actually harming us on a day-to-day basis. So it's actually been a huge year. I mean, despite all the challenges, it's been a huge year in terms of some of the victories that we've had defeating negative bills like that. you know, promoting positive bills and getting positive bills like the Diwali bills passed, getting a bill that protects a Hindu's right to have religious door hangings in front of their homes in HOA communities or in landlord-controlled properties, in states like Nevada. So we've done a lot, unfortunately. So I think this noise oftentimes dominates the conversation and the discussion and the narrative, but we are making a lot of progress as a community and we are moving forward and we're not going to stop moving forward. So, these guys are clowns, right? I mean, these people, these Khalistanis are clowns. I mean, they have these referendums, and I know I'm going off on a little rant here, mini rant, but now I'm angry. Now I'm worked up. They have these like referendums to vote on the creation of a state in another country where the people there themselves don't want it or have no say in it. I mean, can you think of a stupider thing than that? Who would go to these stupid referendums and spend like half their day there? I mean, it's like ridiculous. Like these guys are clowns. These guys are stupid. Unfortunately, in that stupidness, the naive politician, just thinks, oh, it's all like rainbows and like teddy bears. It's such a peaceful movement. No, they're attacking our temples. They're vandalizing our temples. They're harassing people. It's not a peaceful movement. They took down an airplane in Canada, the Air India bombing in 1985. These are violent people, and they have some sophisticated spokespeople, but they are advocating for a violent movement that has a history born in blood and violence. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. And so we're going to continue educating policymakers and others about this issue. And, and they can continue to try to push these issues against us, but it's not going to deter us. We're still going to continue to speak out, protect our rights, protect our temples, work with law enforcement, collaborate and educate them on these issues. And, that's it. They can go and create, they can have a referendum, they can have some chole bhature and enjoy some good food and do whatever they do at these stupid referendums. Last thing I'll say. So funny story. Not so funny, but funny. There's a journalist in Canada, Terry Molesky, very well known, has written extensively on, well respected, retired now, but he wrote on the Khalistan movement. He told me a story that he knows somebody that basically was saying that they went to go vote just to kind of test the legitimacy of these referendums in a referendum, I think in the UK, a Khalistan referendum. And when they asked for the name or they wrote down the name, they wrote down Angelina Jolie. And nobody asked any questions. So Angelina Jolie apparently wants Khalistan. So I mean, that's the kind of the ludicrousness of this issue. So I'll stop there on my rant. Thank you.
So,
I just
of
want to
course
say
it's
one.
go
Oh, go
ahead.
ahead, Matt. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say that, it's of course it's a nonviolent movement. Mr. Singh there in that, I don't know if people can see it on the screen. It's tiny on mine. Of course you're nonviolent because you pose with sniper rifles in your Twitter profile.
I was gonna refer to him as my favorite Khalisani clown. Also want to mention that now I'm craving chole bhature.
I know, me too.
But
I am hungry right now. It's
I
dinner
just
time
want
here
to
in California.
clarify one thing. Our friend, the Twitter handle that you mentioned, has suggested that we get $500 million from the Indian government to be their proxy. I just want to say that we are open to any $500 million donation. It has not come yet. So if you're feeling very generous, please do support our work, not to be double agents, but to be champions for the Hindu American community.
I mean, forget about 500 million. We haven't even gotten like 500 rupees from the Indian government.
I know,
Exactly.
seriously.
Can't even get good chole bhature from them.
Well, that's a good segue to a request for funding. But before we go there, I just want to throw this out to you guys. Really, the topic tonight was the state of Hindus in America today. So I'd love to, at least before we go to fundraising and taking Q&A, I'd just love to leave the audience with some answer. What is the state of Hindus in America today?
I think it's actually pretty good. We've had, as Samir alluded to, the past 6 months, we've had a number of significant victories. As much as the hate has come out, my spirit is lifted by the number of victories we've actually had in the past 6 months at the same time.
Yeah, I would agree with Matt. I think if you cut behind the noise, I mean, it seems like we're facing very difficult and uncharted waters because I think the amplification of a lot of the hate on social media that we see and a lot of things kind of coming together with the immigration conversation with, I won't even say conversation, kind of, I think, scapegoating and demonization of immigrants and conflating that with a lot of the, anti-Hindu rhetoric because of our religious beliefs at temples and our display of Hindu deities, etc. And then some of these other things that are coming from the far left and, South Asianists and others. It seems like, oh my God, this is like the, end of time that we're facing. But I think when you cut through that noise and you get through everything, I think still, we are a community that is resilient. We're a community that is still doing well, working hard, living the American dream as much as we can. And, I think we continue to make progress on all fronts. And of course, we're going to face difficult waters, and we are right now, but I think we will get through it. And I think on the whole, I think, yeah, as a community, we're doing well, and we're going to continue to progress and continue to do well in the coming decades because we ain't going anywhere. So, and I'm not going back to Fremont. So,
Oh, come on. Don't denigrate Fremont.
which is like Little India, anyways.
Yeah, up the road. I'd
Yeah.
say right now we're a little bit caught in the middle. But I also am positive on the state of Hindus, and that's because I think there's more people who appreciate all things Hindu, and there are more people who don't know much about Hinduism, and both of those things present opportunities. So whether it's creating content that educates people who are curious about our traditions, our culture, whether it is creating resources for our community to empower them to be ambassadors and to be advocates, I think that there is a lot of opportunity there. And so I am on the side of positivity and I guess Hinduphilia and not Hinduphobia.
Thank you for that cheese, Suhag.
Yes,
Still hungry here.
on top of my chole bhature.
Of course.
No, don't do that.
Amul cheese. It's okay. It works.
Well, that's I think the state of Hindus will continue to get better, especially if people support the Hindu American Foundation. You know that we have to ask, Titi, if we can go to the next slide. Um, you know, our work is made possible through the generosity of the Hindu American community. 90%, 95% of our funding comes from individuals like you. So your donation to HIF is an investment in improving the state of Hindus in America. It's an investment in the future of Hinduism in America. And, just take a look at this slide. We have about 3.5 to 4 million Hindu Americans, and HIF's operating budget is about 3.75. So we're talking about our community spending $1 per person on advocacy and education. Now, if you take a comparison and a look at the Sikh Coalition with a population of 500,000, an operating budget of over 2 million, they're spending $4 per Sikh American on advocacy and education for their community. And then the last one that we picked was CARE, which is the Council of American Islamic Relations. Now, this is just one of many advocacy organizations that serve the Muslim American community. And the Muslim American community is not vastly larger than the Hindu American community, yet they have far more institutions that are looking out for their advocacy interests, their civil rights, their education. Take a look at CARE, 17 chapters, along with a national chapter. And that national chapter alone is bringing in, almost $5 million. So, I mean, if you combine everything, they're far outspending any of us. So I think the Hindu American community really needs to start stepping up and making an investment in advocacy to ensure that our civil rights, our religious rights are upheld, and education, making sure that Hindu Dharma traditions are not only understood but respected in this country. And that's the work that the Hindu American Foundation is doing. So please do support us. You can make a donation by scanning the QR code on the screen or by clicking on the link that Titi has put into the chat or going to hinduamerican.org/donate. So now we have about 15 minutes. We had some questions that were submitted through the Zoom registration, and we did promise to prioritize those. So Guys, there were a lot of questions about the situation for Hindu American students on college campuses today. Quite a bit of concern around what's happening to them, particularly around and the liberal arts colleges. It wasn't necessarily one particular question, just a whole bunch of comments and concerns about what's happening there. Students going off to college, seemingly secure in their Hindu identity, coming back and being like, everything you taught me was a lie, having done this complete, as we call it, 180. Um, what's the story there, and what can we do about it?
That's a big question with a
It is.
probably
That is a big question.
Big
Where do
question.
yeah,
That's
where
it's
do
what
a
we
I
go
big
on
put
it?
first.
question. I mean, look, I think you need to start when they're young. And that's where I think a lot of the resources that are in the pipeline for HAF, I think will be invaluable to families and to parents. One of the things that I'm really excited about is some of the historical stuff that we're doing, because up until now, it was really hard to find good resources on Hindu history that didn't have a Marxist slant or complete erasure. And so a lot of the stuff that our education team is working on, I think it fills in the gaps. There's a lot of good Balvihars out there, but where there are gaps is knowing where we came from, what our ancestors went through. And I think that having some aspect of understanding of history, so that when you are faced with one perspective, it's not the first time you're hearing something about Indian history and have no other foundation for it. So I think start with them as they're young and be on the lookout for some of those resources.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is that, we're not going to change the college system in any time soon, right? And I think when we look at what Hindu Americans are facing, Hindu American students and families are facing, it's a little bit different, but it's not that different than I think the crisis of university education right now in this country, right? A lack of free speech, a lack of viewpoint diversity, having professors and administrators having oversized influence and weight in how students view certain issues or how they are actually treated in terms of being able to speak out, et cetera. And so that's going to take time, right? That process. But in the meantime, what we can do, and what we are doing is also empowering our community. And one of the things that we've done is create a legal justice center. It's not almost now been a year that we've had that. That we've been building that, and is continuing to expand and scale. And our legal director, Nidhi Shah, has actually created a lot of resources, including for people that are facing issues in the university setting. We have an opportunity for people to kind of reach out if they do have issues, and we can provide assistance. So if Hindu college students are facing issues, are facing discrimination, mistreatment, inequitable treatment, et cetera, there is an avenue to get help and get resources from HF, from our Legal Justice Center. We're also partnering with other organizations. We actually are going to have a webinar coming up in January to deal with things in the school setting. So I think there's a lot that can be done, but I think the onus is not necessarily that, hey, we are going to go out and change the system. I think we need to change ourselves and empower ourselves to deal with a very difficult and problematic system right now. Of course, that doesn't mean that we don't try to do outreach, create content, and work with universities, which we have been doing at the same time. But I think we have to be realistic in that, again, going back to what Matt mentioned earlier, the timeline, right, in the media context. How long is something like that going to take? And what do we do in the meantime to help ourselves?
Yeah, the one thing I'd add to all of that is Suhag mentioned free speech and Samir mentioned viewpoint diversity. I think there's a temptation that I've seen to try to shut down people that we don't like. A professor that will be saying things that are either historically wrong or anti-Hindu, bigoted in some way, is to meet that with counter viewpoints. Don't sit there and say this person can't talk on campus, because that it plays into the very things that they're trying to use against us, saying, "Oh, well, you're just stifling it is their economic freedom, but their academic freedom." Um, so meet those viewpoints that you don't like by putting out ones that you do, and don't play into the game of trying to get people to not speak, because that's not the answer, and that's not going to get us anywhere.
So kind of in line with this whole situation on college campuses. Um, Another question that came in is, what can ordinary Hindus do to feel more comfortable to speak up for their dharma in the face of adversity and disrespect?
Take
You
our
have
Dharma Ambassadors program. Um, I'm really excited about our revamped Dharma Ambassadors program. We've invested in a really cool platform and we'll be rolling it out early next year that provides not just foundational knowledge, but then kind of in-person clinics to hone those skills, to answer the difficult questions, going over misconceptions so that we ourselves can understand where do these misconceptions come from, what is the accurate version of whatever they're trying, whatever topic it covers, and how can you articulate it in a succinct and understandable manner. So that's a plug for our program. But just generally speaking, we need to just study our tradition more, try to fit it into conversations with your kids. You can't just rely on drop off education when it comes to dharma. I remember we were active parents with our local Balvihar, with Chinmay Mission, but we would always have conversations in the car about what they learned, if they had any questions, trying to find those moments to connect our teachings or our ethics with something that they're going on and be prepared to be called out. I think our kids definitely called us out when we would say, you should really be focused on the effort and not the fruits. And if they brought a subpar grade home, they'd throw it back in our face. You should really be focused on the effort. And I tried hard. Be prepared for that. And it's good. It's healthy for them to question. It's healthy for them to reject things. But I think really reviving that tradition of question and answer. All of our sources of knowledge are just that. The Upanishads are questions and answers. They're dialogue. They're debates. And I think we kind of have lost the plot in trying out of maybe fear to shove things down our kids' throats or not try at all. But I think there's a lot of opportunities. And there will be a podcast that we are recording soon with a lot of the parents at HAF that are going to share both the trials and tribulations of and opportunities in kind of imbibing Hindu teachings in our day to day with our kids.
Just to get people's expectations right. We are recording next week, but that will be out on a newly revamped all video version of That's So Hindu sometime in January, late Jan, I think.
Okay. All right, I'm going to try to take a couple of questions from the Q&A here, and just given the time, maybe quick answers. So Samir, this one's probably to you. Why is anti-Hindu hate not explicitly tracked as a category by the DOJ or FBI, despite repeated vandalisms of Hindu temples across multiple states?
So it is. So there is a formal anti-Hindu category. I think the challenge is that the data is not always 100% accurate. There's a lot of underreporting. So a lot of the information does not get there because law enforcement is not required. There's no mandatory requirement for local law enforcement agencies to report that data up to the DOJ and FBI. So part of the onus is on all of us to actually make sure things are reported. And that can be reported directly, even if law enforcement is not reporting things, and make sure things are categorized as anti-Hindu, and not put off as, oh, that's a political incident, right? Like the vandalisms, the pro-Khalistan vandalisms of temples, there's an attempt to say that's not an anti-Hindu, that's a political incident. So making sure that we educate law enforcement on the right nomenclature and ensuring that it is actually included as specifically anti-Hindu hate. So it is tracked. I think we need to do a better job of making sure that information gets there and is reported accurately.
I'll just add that HF was instrumental in it
Yeah.
being added as a category. That was several years ago. So the fact that there's an anti-Hindu category is a fruit of HAF's work several years ago.
Another question that came up was the Pew Forum survey that we've cited a bunch of times, where we were talking about almost 1 in 5 Hindus raised in America no longer identify as Hindu. The question here is the accuracy of that report. Are we confident in its accuracy that verifiable Hindus participated in that? Any thoughts?
I tend to believe Pew. they can do better job sometimes on nuancing questions, but without knowing the exact questions, I have to believe it. I've only had good relations with Pew. They are they're very approachable, and I trust their stats generally.
I'd say the same thing. I mean, when they did that huge survey of Indian social realities in India, that's one of the largest surveys that's ever been conducted. I think it was 30,000 respondents. So we worked with them ahead of the survey as well as after the survey, just in terms of they were getting information and feedback from the community on what are some obstacles, what are things you would like to know, et cetera, et cetera. So they really do their best to be
Yeah,
objective.
they genuinely do. I have no question that they are unbiased or attempt to be. I And we have open channels with them. I recently spoke to somebody about trying to go back to the anti-Hindu hate online to try to parse out the depth of that. And they were very interested in it, but it's a tough question to get to.
Yeah. I'd also say, just anecdotally, everyone should look to their local temple community. How many second gen Hindus are active with your temples? I know that the one that I was active in, I was the only one initially, and then a few more got involved. But that was like, less than five out of a board of trustees of 20 or 30. So I think we know that there's a problem. I think every temple body meeting that we've been to, this is a huge concern for temple leadership too. They say, how do we reach the second generation? So I think whether there's statistics or not, these statistics give us a kind of rather alarming number of 1 in 5, but that presents an opportunity. But I think most people who are active with their temples are already seeing it and feeling it.
Well, I will end with one last question. Really not a question, but anyone want to have any final commentary on our vice president? Thought I'd end with a good one for you guys.
I mean, talk about failing on so many fronts in like one moment. He failed as a vice president. He failed as a husband. I mean, I just if my spouse in front of 10,000 people said, "Yeah, someday I hope Suhag agrees with me," I think he knows what would happen when he came home. But
You'd lose your wedding ring?
let's just say his obsession with X. But anyways, I just it was just so irresponsible, so uncalled for, and it was so much of a lie. Just a few weeks prior, Usha Vance is on a podcast talking about her religious parents and how she tries to incorporate Hindu teachings and Hindu stories into her children's upbringing. So I don't know what kind of political game he's playing, but I think overall it reflected very poorly on him just as a human being.
Yeah. I mean, I think the last point that you made, I think it was a political game. It's political theater, right? That doesn't make it any better or acceptable. But at the end of the day, I think it's about politics and it's about playing to a certain audience, and seeing kind of where the trends are going, which is a larger issue, right? And that brings up a whole other host of questions and issues. But it definitely, I think he's playing politics. But I think it sends a message that, hey, if you are of a different faith community, you are not welcome. You are not American.
Mhm.
And it's defining what it is to be an American. And I think that at the end of the day is the most important, issue that, in his statements, cutting behind all the other nonsense and the hug and this and that with the
Oh, that was creepy.
Erica
That was just creepy.
widow. But yeah, so and I think that's kind of something that you see in different settings. Of course, when it's the vice president, I think it carries a different weight with it, which makes it even more problematic.
Yeah, if you were talking about political theater, on the other hand, you've got Vivek Ramaswamy, who had, I think it was a Talking Points USA event, goes on stage and in the clip I saw at least, did an excellent job explaining
Hmm.
Hinduism to people. And then the political theater part is he brought up somebody that was questioning whether he could be president or represent the nation and he whips out the Constitution and
That was brilliant. That was
ask the
brilliant.
guy, where can you find the part that it says a Hindu can't be a political leader in the US? And then couldn't do it. That was good political theater.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. And on that note, I think we will call it a night. Thanks to the three of you for a really engaging, fun discussion. In particular, thanks to Samir for getting riled up on transnational repression.
Just in time.
Of course. All right. And to everyone who joined us this evening, thank you so much. We really appreciate your support, and we hope that you will continue to support the Hindu American Foundation this year and for many years to come. Thank you and namaste.